When I was about 10 years old, I was at my grandmother's house for summer break, and one night I had called one of my friends and was just talking. Later, I found out that my uncle picked up the phone. It was one of those landlines, and apparently he listened to the entire conversation. When we got to dinner, he told me and my entire family what I had said to her. And apparently, I said something like, "Jessica, I don't need anything in the world because I have you and your love." And that became the butt of a joke for quite a few years, that Gina's in love with Jessica. I don't know why that made me feel so embarrassed, but I think it was the first time that I was told there was something essentially wrong with that statement. Something that made him and my whole family laugh at me. It was the first time that I realized that liking girls was probably not right. Growing up, I didn't know anyone who was queer, gay, or basically just not cis-sexual and straight. Looking back, I realized I lived in a pretty homophobic environment at school, and I didn't have television growing up, so I didn't really see those narratives if they existed. Plus, I went to church, so you can imagine how that shapes one's perception of what it means to love. You learn from a pretty young age that men and women simply go together, and it can be frustrating for someone who doesn't necessarily feel like that's true. When I got to college, I didn't tell really anyone my first year. I thought it was already so hard being Asian American, trying to fit in and be cool at a predominantly white school. You're sort of anxious about how everyone will perceive you. So to add another layer of sexuality on top was too scary for me to even think about. I also gravitated towards Asian American spaces, since you look at me and clearly I'm Asian American. I never attended an LGBTQ or Pride event at school, and rarely did those two groups, the Asian American and queer community, intersect. It was just another period in my life where I was meeting tons of people for the first time and just presenting myself as straight, so I could relate to other people, have something in common to talk about. Up until this period in my life, being the current period, I'd really thought that I was bisexual, thought I was attracted to both men and women, and for most of my life, this meant that if I wanted to pursue any type of relationship, it should be with a man. Maybe because my family is devoutly Catholic, because my mother and grandmother who raised me both went through really difficult divorces and the struggle of raising a child alone. They so desperately want me to have a happy family. They want what they think is best for me based on their own hardships. And I just thought those two aspects of my identity, my race and sexuality, that I thought were most difficult for me to reconcile, were also always at odds with one another. Like, it could never be the case that I'm queer and Asian American. Where would that even fall under? How would I tell my mother, who's done everything for me, who truly believes that love for God is above all things, the world? How could I tell her that I didn't know if I liked men or wanted children at all? This past semester, I started to think about that aspect of my identity more and more as I started coming out to my friends and having tough conversations with them and myself. I started reaching out to other queer Asian Americans who seemed to be more secure in their identity than I was, and listened and resonated and learned a lot from making myself vulnerable. I also look up to queer Asian Americans in the media to see other people grapple with this identity through art, music, and writing. It's truly what I think is most empowering. I don't think anyone's going to give you these stories on a silver platter, despite the fact that both Asian American and queer representation are on the rise. They're still packaged as discrete identities, but people are demanding and fighting for that visibility. Asian Americans are fighting for the freedom to express themselves and live their lives on their own terms. And that compassion and bravery and solidarity and love is what has helped heal my own heart.